So, very good evening to all of you. And I could not meet you all physically, but let me wish at this very moment Happy New Year as well. Exactly 8 days after the New Year's arrival, but today we are meeting for the first time in 2026. Well, we are going to have a sort of a fully packed workshop tonight. What we are going to do here is to give you some skills in the first half of this workshop. And in the second half of the workshop, we are going to try out the strategies we learn in this first half in actual work, with which we are going to practice the things that we master in the early episode. I think that's all right from my end. What about you? Are you guys all ready to go ahead? Friends, shall we go ahead? I wish you all are ready. I would love to hear from some of you guys because I want to feel it a really live session between me and you. Just say yes to go ahead. That's enough.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Go ahead. So today we are going to answer some of the burning issues that you all had since the beginning. So what sort of a language to be used, whether we are going to use the weighty language or rather the big language or Bharavashana, whether we are going to deal with active or passive, simple questions, but just answering yes or no is not typically the answer for any of those questions. Today, in this workshop, I'm going to solve most of the burning problems you have with practical, authentic evidences from the research on writing and, of course, from our experience of research. Well, the workshop is titled Clarifying Who Did What and Useful Phrases. So it's going to be much of a work type day today. We are going to have a comprehensive workshop for research writers. And the two chapters which I am really basing the whole workshop is uploaded to Moodle. Actually, I did it at 7 o'clock. Knowing that even though I updated little earlier, you don't have time to refer to it. So don't worry if you could not refer to it. Knowing that you have no time to refer to it, I decided to have it discussed during the workshop itself, right? I think it's all right. Well, so now this is going to be the workshop agenda for us. Part one of the workshop deals with distinctions, which is about how the clarity is going to be important in your writing and how authorship and passivity should be maintained in your research writing. And we'll be bringing that little beyond active and passive voice. We'll be taking what tends to be used in which places and all that, and particularly on how effectively can we use the very term we. And the first half of the workshop will be followed by a practical activity where we will be spotting ambiguity, which will lead to phase two, which is about chapter 19, which is uploaded once again. And there we are going to deal with the praise bank. Material is given to you, the backpack is given to you, and we are going to have the backpack ready tonight. And we are going to do some practices with the backpack material to ensure that you all are engaging with this active research writing. And there we'll be discussing why we use standard phrases. We'll be looking at introduction, methods, results, and discussion, conclusion, and future work. They are typically the segments or rather sections, episodes of a research paper. We'll be looking at each of the episode and we'll be seeing how different, very significant phrases could work effectively there. And that half of the workshop will also be leading to a bit of a drafting section, which means we'll be doing some work towards the end, right? I think you all are energized and ready to go with me ahead with this workshop. If you are really, really ready, I want to see a thumbs up. I want to see a thumbs up. Yes. Thank you, Kushal. Does it mean that only Kushal is ready? What about the rest, our friends? Thank you, Pramod. Thank you, Janaga and Pamoda. Okay, great. Which tells me that all of you are ready. Thank you, Srivardhana. Okay. So, this whole episode is actually based on chapter 7 of which is actually uploaded to Moodle as at now. You can download it later. You don't need to be really hurry about it. You just have to be with me and engage in the activities, and then you'll be mostly be familiar with the whole idea in chapter 7 and chapter 19. Well, clarifying who did what. Now, what you're doing is a research. And why you're doing it is to create new knowledge. Why do you do so? Because this knowledge industry should progress. So being stakeholders of the knowledge industry, particularly the manufacturers of knowledge, you guys do engage in research. And that research, when you do it, maybe to 100% preciseness, you'll be able to complete your research. That's one thing. But if you could not position your result in the real academia where your research is published and the others take your evidence, others take your data, others take your claims, others take your conclusions to bring the knowledge field further beyond that point, your doing of whole research is purposeless. Therefore, we want you to actually do the research perfectly, and for that, FGS and the University of Moratuwa and its esteemed research team is working hard. And here at the Department of Languages, we are working hard to help you get your research published perfectly, get your research accepted at the journal desk, get your research reserve its place in the bigger academic publication world. So that is the purpose behind all this. And keeping that in mind, let us move. Let us move. Yes. So it is the case. Why actually clarify contribution is going to be important. Now, let me ask a simple question for you all to send me a response via chat. Now, you know, we are not going to teach you how to do introduction, how to do method section, how to do literature review and all that. I'm sure your supervisor, and of course you, being a research student for a while, know how to do that. But what we are doing here is quite simply helping you do your part, do the research part that you're doing in a way that has no flaws coming in the approach that you made to research. And with that, what we're going to do is quite simply positioning your voice in the world of academia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, can you quickly type in chat and send me, if you take a research article randomly, I'm sure that you have read enough, right? If you simply look at a research article, if you look at different segments or other sections of a research article, what 4 sections first come into your mind? What four sections comes into your mind when you remember or reflect about a research article? Quickly type in chat and send me what four sections that you first remember in a research article. I'm waiting for your answer. Let me allow everyone. Thank you, Jayashankar. Title, abstract, introduction, conclusion. Okay, great. What about the others? Quickly send the first four things that comes into mind. Oh, wow. Thank you. Subhashini, Tivanka, Aslam, Nizal, Kusal, Banuka, Rangana, Prisma. Yep. Subhashini's mind is fluctuating only on, it's stagnated on just one thing, it seems. Well, go ahead. Subhashini is typing one at a time. Okay, great. Well, lots of things come in. Come on. Conclusion, abstract, results and discussion, methodology, the title, abstract, conclusion, introduction, abstract, conclusion, introduction, results. Great. Context, theory, methodology, findings. Danisha, it's a little different from the others' answers because you take context, theory. Keywords. That's what Srimali must be coming from an IT field. Am I right, Srimali?
No, sir.
What's your field?
I'm from civil engineering.
Wow. Srimali, I guess that since you particularly refer to keywords, yes, keywords is a very IT savvy way of, searching everything from here and there. It's the catalog. I made a first guess that you are from IT. I was wrong, but you're from IT embedded field. Okay, thank you, Srimali. Well, okay, guys, while you all are sending all of your uh, first four sections come into your mind when you remember a research article, let me ask one thing. Do you guys know? I'm typing it in the chat. Have you ever heard something called IMRAD? And have you ever heard something called hourglass architecture? So, ladies and gentlemen, IMRAD is typically the very simple abbreviation brought into the most significant sections of a research paper. I stands for introduction, M stands for methods, D stands for results and discussion. So this is going to be typically the gist or the heart of the research article. And before IMRAD, there comes something called the front matter. Front matter actually includes abstract and keywords. And there is something called back matter. In back matter, you will get your annexures. Now, research article is typically a set of three sections: the front matter, the article, and the back matter. In the front matter, you actually bring the catalog summary of your research with its key terms. And there where your name, your title, your affiliation, and your research title, abstract, and keywords go. That we call the front matter of a research article. And then introduction, methodology, results and discussion, conclusion, whatever, they come in the article section. And then following the article, there is something called back matter, in which you will add annexures. In the annexures, you will be actually adding data, maybe your data analysis worksheets, maybe your data collection tools, and things that are required for someone to understand your research in a fully immersed context. So why do I talk about this research paper, and why the front matter, back matter, and the research article is going to be important? It's because it's actually a way that you can place, or rather put yourself in the big world of research publication. And when you're trying this, securing your position in this research field, one thing that is important is clarity. Look at what I'm going to discuss here in the first slide. Remember, when you're comparing your methodology and then the results section with established literature, you remember that clarity is non-negotiable. You start with a literature review, which is partly embedded in your introduction. And then you tell your methodology, once again, partly nourished by your literature review. You choose the methodology by looking at methodological gap in the research. And then you provide your results in the paper. Once you have provided all those things, do you think, since you have given everything for the reader to read and understand, if the journal paper, the journal author, journal referee, or the journal reviewer, if he needs clarifications from you in a return email, or rather further clarification from you, do you think that you have done your work properly? I think my question is quite simple. You have given them the whole research paper, right? And you have given them the literature review where you found the very locality in which your research puts in. And then your methods, you tell what scientific method you are following, and you gave results and conclusion as well. Having given all those things to your reviewer, if reviewer has to call you back, send you an email in return, or other desk editor has to send, he takes a decision to call you back, do you think that you have done your job properly? Can I hear from one of you? Is my question clear? Friends, අලුතවරුදි තරහ වෙලා වගේ ඉන්න එපා මාත් එක්ක. Please speak.
Sir, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question is this. Now, once you send your journal article to a journal desk selection, remember that you send it with introduction, methodology, discussion, and all that together, compiled together. Having sent it to the desk, if they have to write you back for any clarification, if they have to send you a return email for a clarification, do you think that you have done your work properly?
So it's actually
Hello? Two of you were trying to call me, but I missed each. Please speak.
Yes, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to say if it's a good thing or bad thing, because sometimes some authors, they request for some changes that they, from their point of view,
Mhm.
which doesn't mean that the like art journalism doesn't deliver what it meant to deliver.
Okay. I would accept your answer as a valid point for the time being, and you'll resolve it later. Any other
Yes.
points?
Sometimes editors, sometimes they say the research gap is not clear, and that kind of comments also we can get. No, sir, figures are not clear.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Not written in the there's a not innovative things are not there, like kind of comments we received.
so simply there can be three kinds of comments coming back. First one, congratulating you that your article has been selected for peer review. That's a good response, but it's not asking clarification, right? Okay, that's the best answer that you can reserve, right? The second question could be on something clarifying on any of the sections of your research article. If the article reviewer or rather desk editor has to contact you back for a clarification, don't you think that it's partly a duty that you not perfectly performed? Because if you have written it perfectly for reader to understand, for your reviewer to understand, that's one thing. If you have convinced the reviewer sufficiently, your work is done. But if you could not convince, it is partly a defect in your writehood. But keep in mind that this is not a bad omen. This is not something wrong, right? Even though you have done your job properly, yes, still there can be clarifications asking from you. There are two reasons. The first reason is we are actually coming from the global south. You know what is the nature of global south? We are behind something called the huge subscription wall. Now, at University of Moratuwa, with Faculty of Graduate Studies, do you have the access to Scopus database of journals? At least through library route?
No,
Friends,
sir.
no.
We don't have access to the.
Right. So how do you get the access to high-end journals? I'm simply asking from you a very simple question. Now, some of the peripheral universities in Sri Lanka do still fund for their corpus subscription, at least at the library level. But for whatever reason, at University of Moratuwa, I don't find such a facilities made available. This actually places a wonderful barrier, an unbreakable barrier in front of us. You know why? Most of the highly cited, highly recognized quartile articles actually do publish it in Scopus database. And it has a huge subscription wall. Being Global South participants of this research discourse, we actually do not have much access to the very well-reputed journals. So if you get a response from your journal editor asking for clarification on something, still don't worry. Even though he has something to ask from you in clarification, if he decides to call you back, that's once again your fortune. Why? In the article, you have done a substantial job, which actually is convincing enough for your editor to consider it. But he needs certain clarifications on certain areas. That is to verify your knowledge on that particular episode with the world standard in the academia, or rather, it's about the status quo, how and where the actual research lies and where your research lies. So, still you are lucky. That's about the second clarification you might receive from a journal. What is the third clarification? Third clarification would be some facts about clearing on some aspects that you have written. They want to receive a clearance on certain aspects, whether this particular fact, whether this particular claim is your own claim, or is it something substantiated by your research, or is it something that you take from another article that you happen to cite. So these little tricky questions on the facts and claims that you made in the research article are actually falling to your defects in language engineering, which means what we are doing here, right? So today I'm going to give you actually a little strategy toolkit where you can overcome these difficulties. Well, look at when comparing your methodology or results with established literature, 100% clarity is non-negotiable. It's typical that, no one can get 100% clarification, but for your article to be selected, it needs nearly 70% of clarity. And rest of the clarity aspect could be actually achieved in the process of review. Ambiguity actually prevents the referee in the sense your reviewer, from identifying your specific contribution, particularly whether certain contributions are made by you or whether it's made by someone else, or perhaps some of them were calling you back, asking clarifications, why don't you refer to this article? Or rather, they might be recommending some other publications to refer with your own write-up. So my point here is this, that look at this example which is given in the bottom. It was found that x equals 1. It was found that x equals 1. So the reviewer has a question. It was found that. Did you find this? Or did another author in your literature review find it? Or is it? You see, I'm sure that you are guessing what clarification that you are leaving for your reviewer to consult you back. So in your writing, you can actually clear all these doubts if you do follow the simple steps that we are going to discuss today. Let's move on and see how this clarification could be reduced to 0 and how acceptance rates could be increased to at least 70 plus. Here we go. Typically, journal referees' complaints in the referee complaints are like this. They sometimes ask about identity crisis. What are they? The authors have referred to themselves as we. This is not accepted practice in physics. Now, in your write-up, you go on writing a research article, and at a point, your team of authors, refer yourselves as we, right? And particular journal, which is popular in physics, do not like to use that way of using we as the authors, so that they find it a crisis. Look at the second aspect, ambiguity. It is hard to tell when the author is referring to his work or the literature. There comes, particularly when you interpret literature, when you actually comment, criticize, and discuss the literature, looking for the literature gap, what happens is when you evaluate and actually explain and interpret the research findings done by others in your literature review with your writing, your reviewer finds hard to tell whether the author is referring to his own work he did, or else whether he is referring to something that he cited in literature, or is it something else? So this is part of the ambiguity. The reviewer, probably a first language speaker, native speaker of English, finds it difficult because our language is typically different from theirs. Well, all these things actually pull you in a rejection risk. Why? If the reviewer cannot detect whose voice is this and who is the agent and who does it, who's what, if the reviewer finds it difficult to detect, it's highly likely that your article will be rejected. This is as seriously comprised by ability to access the merit of the paper. Now remember, you may have done one of the best researches in the world, but at a journal desk, if it is rejected because of ambiguity, because of not having clarity in your writing, this is a very, very serious case. These are typically the editor's reviewer complaints that are coming in everyday research. Where and how these ambiguities, these clashes arise? Most dominantly, or rather ubiquitously, this comes as a response, or rather as a result of active versus passive distinction. Now remember, some articles do prefer active, whereas the other prefers passive. Therefore, I cannot teach you directly as a fact, in this section use active, in that section use passive, in the other section use active or passive. It is highly unlikely that we are capable of telling it, because it depends on the article that you are targeting at, the journal that you are targeting at. If the journal has a particular tradition, particular orthodoxy in their own screening process, ladies and gentlemen, we are helpless. We have to follow their structure. So the first advice is check guidelines. Always check guidelines to authors. Particularly some fields, particularly physics and chemistry, they prefer impersonal forms, which means they actually do not like personal reporting of research. So they refer the other way around. So active form, we performed 2 tests. Blake and others carried out 1 replication. Now you see here the agent is clearly indicated. The team of researchers are referred as we, and Blake and others are referred to as them or someone else. So they, with the agent in the place, they use active voice and inform. And those things could be sometimes an irritating factor for a journal desk reviewer, because journal has a different tradition and you are writing it in a different alternative tradition, different to what the journal seeks. Look at the passive trap, which is indicated in the other side of the screen. If forced to use passive, you must be extremely careful to distinguish actors. Now, if the particular journal article is forcing you to use passive, right? You cannot simply convert all your write-up into complete passive voice construction or synthesis. You have to be careful, because sometimes we might be finding difficulties in distinguishing who did what. So passive form, just look at 2 tests were performed, by whom is not given there in passive form. 1 replication was carried out by Lake. So there can be a second question. 2 tests were performed, 1 replication by Lake. Who could be the other replicator? You see, these simple ambiguities actually lead the entire paper to be ill-judged, or rather not judged well, so that you put in a margin of rejection risk. Let's look at how we can overcome them. Let's look at when is passive useful. Keep in mind, if you want, you may take a note. When you are going I'm sorry, there was a technical failure coming in. My connectivity missed. I think I'm clear, Mac. Am I? There was a little hiccup coming in. Is it solved now? Am I audible and visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Great. Let me switch off the video so that it will be easy for streaming when audio only goes. Okay. And you don't need to look at my ugly, horrible face further. Well, here we are. When do you think is passive is useful? Look, the first point is when you're describing a process, particularly this comes in methods. Put the equipment or procedure in the focus. You don't need to make use of the active voice. Say, for example, we heated the solution up to 100 Celsius would be an odd sentence. Instead, the stronger sentence could be the solution was heated to 100 Celsius. Look at it. So there, the passive is really, really useful. Second point, if you're describing an established knowledge, particularly in your introduction, or perhaps when you're referring back to the other literature in your discussion episode, once again, passive voice could be very much useful because you are dealing with established knowledge, which are beyond questioning. Now here, the example, bilingual children are believed to adapt better than people believe. Well, now here, what you say, bilingual children are believed to adapt better. If you say people believe bilingual children adapt better, is a very loosely connected sentence, whereas bilingual children are believed to adapt better makes much more stronger sense. So you come to know two sections where two instances where passive is going to be really useful. Can you trace them? When you're describing a process, that's number one. Particularly this appears in method section. You can simply keep away who does what. Instead, you can put the equipment and the procedure and the method in the focus, keeping the researcher aside. That is the first place. And the second place is when you are actually dealing with established knowledge, you can clearly refer to passive voice, right? Look at what is the note given. In formal writing, someone, one, or people, when you take, the solution was heated to 100 Celsius. If we are to put that in active voice, you might say we heated the solution to 100 Celsius. We could be okay in the surface, but it seems to be quite odd and awkward. Or rather, if you say the researcher heated the solution to 100 Celsius, a little odd. There where you use passive voice. Formal writing is typically devoid of in the sense it doesn't have phrases like, someone, one, people. We do not take these things as subjects in our typical formal writing. So I think you are clear about the two instances where passive voice is going to be particularly useful, where when you're describing a process, and secondly, when you're dealing with discussing established knowledge, passive voice is going to be really, really, really important. And there, the passive does its role. Passive does its role and role. Well, let's move on to see what else. Tense usage for what? For differentiation. Now, when you want to differentiate one thing from the other, what tense could you use in your write-up? I'm just taking 3 different tenses here: the present simple, past simple, and present perfect. Look at each of these tenses and their use. Present simple, when you're dealing with general knowledge or established fact, particularly the very established other authors' facts, then you can directly involve with present simple tense. Bilingual children show greater adaptability. Now, this is a very strong fact in literature. In terms of adaptability, monolingual, one language speaking students are actually slow in adaptation, but bilingual children are great in adaptation. So it's a very well known fact and it's general knowledge, so that we simply say it in simple present tense. Look at the simple past tense experience. Specific finished action. Now remember, this is particularly about your work because you are reporting it after completing, or maybe other work which are already completed, which means the other literature that you are dealing with. We identified 149 children. Now, when you say we identified 149 children, there is no ambiguity at all. It indicates that it is the researchers who found, identified, and we are reporting an action which has completed or which is finished by now. There where the past simple tense is going to be used. And what about present perfect? And in this particular tense, you have to be very, very, very much careful. Why? It is about past to present. Present perfect tense is actually a continuum, not just a single point of the time. It's a continuum from past to present. So when you are dealing with others' findings, particularly in literature review, from beginning of the research up to the status quo, you'll be dealing them in a sequence from past to present. But keep in mind, present perfect, you are not going to refer your specific experiment with what? Present perfect tense syntax. You know why? Just look at the third example. Similar levels have been found. If you talk about similar levels have been found to report your own research, which puts in an ambiguity, which puts the reviewer in an ambiguity. Why? You are supposed to report the findings after completing, right? And here you use your own data in present perfect tense, which means you admit partly that your work is not completed. Secondly, that messes with the things that you should refer in literature review to referring to a finding connecting from past to present. You'll be using present perfect, but never should you use your own specific experiments in present perfect tense. I think these 3 advices are really, really important for you to particularly channel the native referees, native reviewers who review your paper. Before I move further, I would love to give you a chance to ask questions if you have got on anything that we discussed so far. Don't worry, all these things that I have been prescribing cannot be, simply registered into your memory. But when we are doing exercises in the coming couple of minutes, you'll be able to convince yourself how these tense matters, active and passive matters do work. Friends, have you got any question on these things that we have discussed so far? If not, we can move forward.
What about for the legal research?
Yeah.
I think the suitable, the form is a passive form because for the legal, the research articles, we must refer the many, the case laws, common law, the practices and other things. Therefore, I think the suitable one is the passive, the form. What about?
Well, Mahesh, thank you for bringing that fact to the surface. Yes, when you're referring to cases and past events, particularly if you are keeping the author aside, but you're taking the very case alone, yes, passive is the perfect form. Because we keep the agent aside and we take the very incident as the fact. Yes. But once again, most of the legal researchers of journals, they prefer passive incorporation, but it does not dare mean that it should be 100% passive.
Yes. Generally, the past simple the method also the use that because I read many research article to the law, construction law, etc. However, I noted the researchers they use the past the simple. That therefore you are correct. Then
yes, true. Once again,
I think
let me remind you one thing. Yeah, what you're telling is quite right. Let me remind you one thing. Now, you do your research and you report it in a way that it fits to the submission window. Say, for example, if you are doing your research to submit for university thesis, it has a particular style. You have to follow that style. And if you are targeting a particular journal, you cannot submit the same thing that you submitted to the university to the journal because you have to refer to the journal's preferences and you have to convert your whole thesis, which you have written for university, to fit into the journal's requirements. Thank you, Mahesh, for bringing that point to the surface.
Okay.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Okay, thank you.
Ladies, haven't you got any question? Samanen කාන්තාව කියන ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන අයනේ. මම එහෙම කියලා කාන්තාව ඔක්කොම නිශ්ශබ්ද කරවද්ද නෑ නේද? සමාවෙන්න එහෙම වුණා නම්. Pardon me if I happen to urge that point and happen to purposely silence any of you. I didn't mean to that. Shall we move forward then? If there isn't any question up to now, we can move forward. Shall we?
Yes.
Yes, we'll move. Here we go. Just look at a quick reference. This is a quick reference of tenses. The tense is indicated in the leftmost corner for present simple, present perfect, past simple, and past simple once again. The context is the most important thing. If you're dealing with established knowledge and general truths of others, yes, it's present simple. Look at the example. And if it is present perfect, you see, it's about recent research, multiple studies, and there are a couple of them on the same topic, and particularly it's done not by you, by others. You see, we take and refer that in present perfect tense. And particularly when it comes to your procedures or methods and results, remember that you have to use what? Simple past. And if the particular case is specifically historical study, you have to get back to the simple past tense, right? So these are simple examples. Do not need to elaborate further on. You can, while you are doing a literature review, you'll find that how others have done it. Well, just look at the Wordsworth's problem. Look at the places where I put some numbers. They are not IEEE citation in text. They are actually referred to some of the points where clarity is missing. Bilingual children were found to show a greater adaptability. 149 children were identified. It has been found that. Now, in each of these cases, you see, it's a mix of passive. And see how impossible to know whether it is the Wordsworth or the author who did each of these actions, or is it someone else? Let's move and see how difficult it is. Look at the ambiguity. Read what is given in the box. I feel really sorry about this technical difficulties surfacing. I'm in the metropolis of Sri Lanka, but unfortunately, this disturbances surface. Well, forget about it. Look at what is given there in the box. Similar adaptability levels have been found in trilingual children. There, the citation is given, Coleridge 2011. However, in many such cases, it was found that one of the three languages was not as strong as the other two. Table 2. Now, your task is this. Now, in this particular sentence, your task is to find, number 1, who found the adaptability levels in sentence 6. Number 6, who found? Number 7, who found the language strength issue in number 7? When you read this extract, can you guess? Can you guys guess? Doesn't make a guess. Do you mean that in both cases, 6 and 7, it's both, in both cases, it's Coleridge? Okay, doesn't matter. Yeah. First one is Coleridge, second one is unsure. Okay. What about the others? Make a guess. Make a guess. Similar adaptability levels have been found in trilingual children. Coleridge 2011. However, in many such cases, it was found that one of the three languages was not as strong as the other two. Doesn't comments. Coleridge found that one of the three languages. Well, the very conundrum, the very complexity that you encounter right now is actually the very complexity that a reviewer finds when some of your writings are read. When they are reading through, you being the plotter, the author of the whole research, you know who did what. But your reader does not know whether you are referring to literature, whether you are referring to any study, or whether you are referring to your own study, is a matter that is known to you only. So reader should not have any ambiguity in detecting those. Let's look at how we can rewrite the sentence without this ambiguity. Look at it. Coleridge is clearly the case of number 6. Why? The citation is given and it said have been found. Okay. Number 7. Number 7, who the author is actually ambiguous. It was found because we make the claim itself ambiguous. It was found. By whom is not answered. Could be Coleridge, or perhaps the author of this article, right? Reference to table 2 once again suggests the author. So in sentence 2, it is actually the author who is referring, that is coming because, by table 2, table data and all that are typically from the author's data. But reader has to make lots of guesses to arrive at a conclusion. So let's see how could this be better solved. Look at the better version. However, in many such cases, our findings reveal that one of the 3 languages was not as strong as the other 2. You see, the second half could have been cleared without putting it in passive voice. Rather than telling it was found, that you can say our findings revealed, right? Or rather we found. This instantly resolves the ambiguity so that the reader does not want to stop and question and ponder. He can swiftly move reading your article. Did you get the point? Ladies and gentlemen, did you get the point? We have to move to the next slide, but before that, let me know whether you have got the point correctly. Actually, the whole activity is to convince you that sometimes we do not intend to create an ambiguity there. We do not want to make it blur, but even without our intention, certain things go blur and require an ambiguity, requiring the clarifications from the reviewer, calling back to you, asking who did what. So do not leave these instances in your writing. Let's move off the power of we. Using we effectively. Now imagine that we and I, particularly the authors, how we can maintain author's agency in your writing. If your journal permits, we is the simplest differentiator. What I'm telling here is, if your journal permits reporting your data as we or I, simplest differentiator is using that term. How can you detect it? Quite simple. Read a couple of open access journal articles by the same journal. When you read through, if you found that most of the, or rather often the case that the researchers use we and I to differentiate themselves as the authors, that is an indication that you can use we and I as your self. In that case, never go for other ways of indicating it, because if the particular journal prefers that, the simplest way of differentiating yourself is using I and we. Look at the examples. Blake investigated children from the US, whereas we studied children in Europe. Now you see how clear it is. You are comparing your research with an older study. Blake did it with children in the US. We found it children in Europe. Don't start every sentence with we. On Okatamai Narakamade, right? Never ever. Now, this is very typical advice that I'm giving for everyone. What is it? Even though the first person and I and we are referred and preferred in the journal, do not often use I and we. Time to time, you better have a mix of active and passive wherever necessary. Well, Indula, well, I'll be answering your question certainly in the next slide. Don't worry. Indula, I'm sorry if I happen to attribute you a bit of gender, right? Use in our study to set the context for a paragraph of passive verbs. What I'm telling in the third bullet point is what you just asked. You do not often need to say we, I did this, we, and so. You can simply take a step back on we, and we can simply say in our study, in this study, which refers back again, giving you the agency, but breaking the monotony of using we and I frequently. එක දිගට I සහ we භාවිතා කිරීම කරනව වෙනුවට ඔයාට strategically you can effectively use in our study, in my study, in this study. I think you got the point. Did I answer your question, Indula?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Well, let's move on.
Can I ask more?
Sure.
Yeah, there are many the reviewers they mention, I observe it, they mention don't use whereas word, whereas karana kotagen, but what about you are thinking, sir? Whereas, because the many reviewers in their comments don't use whereas word.
Well,
now I have seen the whereas we study like.
All right.
Yeah, sir. What about you are thinking? Use whereas karana
Right.
kotagen likewise. What about?
Yeah.
The reviewers mention, I know.
Perfect. Now, this is why we have to be very much careful. Now, one reviewer works for one journal with that particular journal standards. So, whereas could be
Yes.
actually a misleading connector for certain sciences, particularly. Now, if you look at this, whereas is a very valid connector in humanities. The very reason is you are simply comparing the context in contrast. That's why we use whereas. But if you take the same very word to report a scientific research, it might be indicating a little lowered sense of comparison. That's why certain article reviewers do not like whereas to use in theirs. So that's why I often say, if I can remember myself correctly, we cannot teach the method in research writing. What we have to indicate you often is your method is, or rather it should be the method of the journal you are targeting at, the institute you are writing for. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's move on. When not to use we. Look at the bold point. Do not use we to explain your thought process. It sounds like a teacher at a whiteboard. Avoid. First of all, we need to explain, let us clarify this concept. Never ever tell it. Because in research writing, you are not simply demonstrating something using a whiteboard or something. You know, this is typically a mess that we create because we are both teachers, researchers, students, and writers. So when we play many roles, we sometimes mess our teaching role in our writing. Do not go and do it. Be concise. The reader doesn't need a tour of your mind. How your mind works is not relevant to your reader. What we have to assume always is how this particular thing could be communicated to your reader sitting in a distance, because reader has no way to consult you back without writing you an email or something, right? So leaving no room for him to consult you back for clarifications, remember that you keep your thought process away from the writing. මම කියන කාරණේ සිංහලෙන් කියනනම් අපි හිතන විදිහට ලියන්න, අපි පැහැදිලි කරමින් ලියන්න යන්න එපා. හැම වෙලේම කතන්දරය පැහැදිලි වෙන ලෙස ලියන්න. තනින් තන මතුවෙලා අපි පැහැදිලි කරන්න යන්න හොඳ නැහැ. Say for example, if we say, first of all, we need to explain, or rather we need to define these terminology, right? Instead say, defining the terminology, or rather the term X defines in this particular way. You don't need to say, first of all, we should define it, because it's a must. That is how you think. ඉස්සරළම අපි මේක define කරගෙන ඉන්න ඕනේ කියලා වාට හිතුණාට, it's not what the reader minds. What the reader minds is quite simply whether your story connects from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, A to B, B to C, and so on. Let's move. So the idea is clear. To indicate how you think, never use we or I. You can report your research and what you did in the research using we and I, but not how you think while writing. I wish you got the point. Look at this example of conciseness. Look at the original. It's going to be chatty. Let us clarify this concept by focusing our attention on trilingual adults. Now you see, let us clarify this. Our attention focusing. Oh my God. In fact, we can see that they present. Look at the revised version. You'll see clearly. In fact, in our tests, trilingual adults had. So you don't need to say, this is writing to clarify, this is, I'm not demanding your attention. You don't need to write any of those things. Just go and tell, cut the fluff, directly jump into the data, because data, or rather, the very facts that are visible other than your thinking process is most significant in your research write-up. While you're doing this writing, logical connection is a must. We see often, you tend to list facts. A says this, B says this, C says this. And I see most often in STEM research, you simply do literature reviews in tabulated forms. It's okay as long as it is permitted in your particular institute and journal. But do not dare go to list facts, because that will lose your agency in writing the article. Try to explain why you are citing someone without just listing out. Emphasize why you take that particular citation from a particular person. I wish you got the point. There where you connect your ideas, your purpose of writing the journal article with the ideas that you borrow from others. So you have to make a connection often. The second thing is paraphrasing. Now, when you're doing paraphrasing, remember that you are using short paragraphs, because paraphrasing means the original idea is there and you are recrafting it. If you are going to make many ideas together and try paraphrase, there is a high chance that you mess the facts. So use short paragraphs and paraphrase them, right? One for the previous work's paraphrase, and one for your own work's paraphrase. Now, there are two paraphrases coming in. Imagine that earlier work and your work is placed together, one to next, one another, juxtaposing. So what happens? Use one paragraph for one particular writer and another for the other. Quite simple. The idea is quite simple. Do not put many ideas together in a paraphrase. When you're paraphrasing, keep in mind that you use short paragraphs, and at paragraph level, they have to be short without messing lots of paraphrasings put together with one and the other. If you are using two authors, remember that you divide it into two paragraphs, because paraphrases are often misunderstood. That's why the paragraph break is there. You can paraphrase one particular article's idea in one paragraph, and if you are referring to your ideas in the next paragraph, take it into next paragraph without conjoining the two. And when you are doing this whole exercise, signposting is very important. Signposting in the sense you indicate perhaps connectivity, disconnectivity, similarity, and so on. Use these words like consequently, in contrast. These words actually make the reader a room to identify, yes, this guy is contrasting it with the previous fact, and he is comparing it with the previous fact. Yes, he's going to bring another idea. So this signposting while you're writing is quite important, because they logically connect the idea you communicate. Now you have a little work to do. We've been speaking a lot. Now you have a little work to do. Look at the original text. Tests of language. I actually took a very simple language research to make it easy. Tests of language skills are best carried out under situations of stress. That is a saying by Tong, 1992. Data obtained from these simultaneous translations indicated that. What is the problem? Is the data from the Tong or the current author? Why was the test done? So lots of questions. You cite an author and then you directly jump into data obtained. And your reader is finding it difficult to detect whether it's Tong's data or the author's data. What you are supposed to do? Take this particular sentence example, two sentences example, and use a logical connector with a clear differentiator and rewrite this, making no ambiguity involved. I'm giving you 3 minutes to think and 2 more minutes to type it. And in 5 minutes, I want your response coming in chat. You have to use a logical connector, differentiator, and keep in mind that this particular thing comes in context for the methodology. This particular citation is used in a context where this person is referring to his methodology, and then, yes, there where Tong is cited. So you are clear about the context. Go ahead, take time and respond me. I'll keep myself muted, but if you have any question, you can raise. I'm listening. I'm patiently waiting for your answers. Thank you, Indula, for your answer. I'm sure Isma must be wondering why I laughed at your attempt. It's because why do you want to say it has been identified while Tong is there? Tong's name is given. Who has identified? Tong. So do not need to go for such waste of words since you know Tong identified that tests and so on. Risma, did I hurt your feelings? I don't think I am.
No, no, sir. Understood.
Okay, you go ahead. Minura, you happen to actually develop a story around the whole thing. I think, yeah, it's a good attempt, but there are things that you can still drop, like, when you say this study follows the same principle but generates new primary data, you don't need to say not Tong's original data set, right? It's an unnecessary phrase. I'm not going to comment on the whole, but I'm just telling you good practices that you can maintain. Everyone, please send your responses. Binura, I'm just asking once again. Therefore, to validate this theory, our survey analyzed data. Don't waste that much of time and words. Therefore, to validate, data were analyzed simultaneously. Yeah, the, data from simultaneous translations were analyzed. Good, but it's a good attempt that you made. Aslam. Aslam, I think your translation, your write-up still has ambiguity. You better try it again, because I cleared you the situation that this person is taking Tong as a citation for the very methodology section. The latter half he talks about data is the author's data, right? So that it's not Tong's data at all. Well, I'm glad to see you that you guys are trying it. You might see that very simple exercise, but you notice that, when you make the mistakes, they actually appear to be very simple and minute and trivial, but a very, very minute trivial mistake might end your research paper in rejected state. That's why I'm stressing this much on all these aspects. Well, thank you for the ones who happen to send it. I think I have given sufficient time for you all to send, and let's look at the sample suggested answer. This is a sample I told you. If I happen to write this sample answer, I won't use, it is well known that tests of languages are best carried out under situations of stress. I will simply avoid tests of language skills are best carried out under situations of stress without the first 5 words. Consequently, to assess the proficiency of the bilingual children in our survey, a series of tests were carried out. Now, they indicate these are relevant to our data, and we took this particular approach because Tong has clearly identified that they should be done under stress situation. You see, it is well known, sets general context, but I do prefer you don't need to use that even, right? Consequently, you make a logical bridge between the two facts. Our survey, which tells explicitly that we are referring to our data directly. So it has to be this clear when you're writing your write-up. Well, so we are almost done with the first half of the chapter. This is chapter 7 summary. What is the summary? You know which is your work and which is someone else's. That is something you know as the writer, but the reader do not know. Therefore, you must make it clear for them because you are writing it for the reader. I told you even in my last lecture that as the author, as a sole owner of your own research, you know everything and it is all there haunting in your mind. So that you think you have written it quite correctly because your mind always knows the story. But this puzzle, which is not known to your reader, should be clearly articulated. I think you got the points that we thought of discussing in chapter 7 summary. If it is the case, you can actually have about 5 minutes break, but do not leave the meeting because bit and much more handiwork comes in the next 1 hour's time. Just take 5 minutes break. I'm sure you know by now you must be in need of moving to washroom, needing to have a cup of water. Have it, and we'll be meeting in 5 minutes time. I'll be back here by 9:08. Now it's 9:03. I'm back here, friends. Hope you are also back. So, shall we move on to the second chapter that I published on Moodle, that I uploaded on Moodle? Shall we go on to the discussion of that? If you guys are there, if you can simply indicate it with the thumbs up, I'll be glad. Yes, thank you, Subhash. Thank you, thank you. So, friends, what's next? Now, after this discussion, you can actually refer back to the very detailed exercise included chapter, which is uploaded already to the Moodle, and you can simply navigate through that and clear any doubt which is arising right now. But I'm sure that I happen to clear most of the doubts arisen on its way. So we'll see how some of the useful phrases could be used to address this whole thing. Now, one thing that I want to tell you. Now, when you use frequent, let me say, orthodox, very frequently used set of phrases, you know that nowadays these plagiarism checkers, Turnitin and all that, Authenticate and all that, traces them as what? Similarities, right? But still, there are certain useful phrases you cannot avoid. And we are going to look at those instances where even though it is cited, flagged by plagiarism software as similarities, we have to still use them, because without them, we cannot simply move on in scientific writing. Well, the power of standard phrases. Now, I told you a little while ago, just a second ago, that some phrases which are really standard, if you are going to use it, will it be cited elsewhere as plagiarized? Non-native researchers often worry about plagiarism when using standard phrases. Don't worry about it. To tell you frankly, generic phrases are actually templates. Say, for example, introduction. Without saying introduction, there is no other way of telling it. They ensure correct English structure. Keep that in mind. They allow referees to focus on your data, not your grammar. Keep in mind that standard phrases are always welcome, and that is a must vocabulary that you follow in your writing. Don't ever be afraid to use them on the fear of plagiarism, right? They are like templates. They actually ensure correct English structure. And with those standard phrases, your referees focus directly onto your data. And When you use standard phrases, actually, even the referees forget the grammar of whole thing and they move on reading the data and the rest of the story because it's all written in standard phraseology. So let's see what experts do say. What John Morley says is academic writing is characterized by pre-constructed phrasal elements retrieved from memory as wholes. Now, academic writing is typically about pre-constructed phrasal elements. Look what Hillary says. Organizing your information in a conventional way and using conventional language is really important. Conventional language is not plagiarism. Conventional language is not typically what we call verbatim copying. It's simply allowing you tell your story quite precisely and directly, and of course, allowing your reviewers read it because it comes in standard phrases. How to use the phrase bank? This is the reference to chapter 19, which I uploaded as the second document of today's workshop material, right? There, it's given in an order how this what we call research writing sections, starting from abstract, introduction, literature review, methods, results, and discussion, conclusion. The phrases in the particular chapter are organized in the same order, so that when you want to refer to something related to abstracts, the standard phraseology is given there in the opening section. And on literature review, it's given in a separate section, so that it's organized in such a simple structure where you can make it as a blueprint reference for you to refer back and forth. And the flexibility is that you are flexible to use synonyms, but be careful. Say, for example, if you use particularly the verbs with synonyms in the phrase bank, be careful, because certain verbs particularly communicate strong idea, whereas the others simply dilute the idea a little bit, making it tentative. But still, you are flexible enough to use synonyms in places of the phrases, banks, verbs, and other words. But be careful, because each word in its own context has a very strong meaning at a time. And if you want to make it a little diluted, you can go for a synonym, but precisely check how nicely fitting the synonym to the context that you are using it. I wish you got. These are simple principles how to use this phrase bank. And let us look at some of these examples. In the introduction, if you want a introduction and importance, it's at the very beginning. You see, fundamental component of. If you just say something is fundamental component is going to be the simple phraseology. It's a fundamental component of. You see, these examples do appear in your introductory section. You can refer it with examples and context and all that. You see, many users, many roles, many applications in the field. Now, these are instances where you can replace some of those phrases with synonyms. Well, just imagine that you are highlighting gap. You see, when you indicate the gap in your literature review, you develop on a particular logic, revealing the research trajectory, and now you want to say that still there is something left behind for you to include. You see how we begin it? However, few researchers have addressed So you see, there is research, but it's done by few. You see, the same can be told as in the praise bank. X is still poorly understood. Or rather, you might say, previous work has been limited to. You see, when you know this praise bank as part of your research write-up manual, I'm sure that you are going to make it much more standard, with which you'll get much more visual, what we call, effect on your research paper, because it goes to mostly native writers of English. They will pick yours in the play, without doubt. Look at when you talk about the aims, this paper seeks to address. The aim of this study is to validate. We propose a new procedure for. Now, quite simple. I'm simply bringing examples from the praise bank for you to convince how effective they are when you are using them in your write-up. Well, we are going to try a bit of an awkward thing. What is it? We are going to build an introduction. You have the praise bank with you. If you do not have it, you can simply download it from the two materials. The second one is the praise bank. What you're supposed to do now? You are researching on a particular thing. What is it? Solar panels in rainy climates. Now, the solar is popular for sunny climates, but you are going to study something for a different purpose. Solar panels in rainy climates. You can use the praise bank to do one thing. What is it? Read the task. Use the praise bank to state why solar panels are important. Use the praise bank and articulate why solar panels are important using the praise bank phrases. Mention that most studies focus on sunny climates, right? This is perhaps the research gap. Almost all solar panels and that researchers focus on sunny climate. And then state your aim, why you use this particular research. That is to test solar panels in London context. So it's a simple task, but I'm sure this will guide you as to how you can articulate something out of a given praise or phraseology bank, or rather praise bank. Shall we take 3 minutes and do this? I wish the task is clear. You are researching on solar panels in rainy climates, and you're going to use the praise bank and write, state why solar panels are important. You can simply search it and get it into your write-up. Mention that most studies focus on sunny climates, there where you find the research gap, and tell that in this study you aim to test solar panels in London context. So write it and make sure that you typed it out and send it in chat. You just have to find, or rather articulate, 3 to 4 sentences, 3 to 5 sentences to tell this whole introduction. And in support of your standard use of phrases, we have provided chapter 9 as an uploaded material in Moodle. Please make use of this opportunity and do your write-up here. And in the meantime, as you're visiting back the Moodle page, I will invite you all to mark your attendance as well. As this time we are visiting it, please make sure that you mark the attendance as well. Let me switch it on. You can actually mark the attendance right now. You can mark your attendance. And your password is author, AUTHOR, author. And I'll share your password on screen and mark your attendance manually. As you're visiting the Moodle page, I'm inviting you to mark your attendance too.
Excuse me, sir. It cannot be marked at the moment.
See whether now, is it possible right now?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Not yet, sir,
Sir,
not yet.
time is mentioned as AM, sir.
Oh my God.
7:30 AM.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Let me correct it. Let me correct it. I'm sorry, because it's in the last moment that I happen to activate it while uploading goes on. Yes. It is 21, right?
$19, sir.
And try whether you can do it right now.
Yes, sir. Now possible.
Okay. Please mark the attendance while you are doing your work. I'll share
Could
the
you
pa-
please repeat the password?
Okay, I'll send it in your chat. Password is sent in chat. And I'm waiting for your responses here. Why solar panels are important. I'm waiting for the first introduction to come here. I'm inviting you not to leave. Some of you are seemingly marking your attendance and leaving. It's all right, but I won't be exhausting you much. I'll be doing only 2 more activities, which are simple, and then we'll move ahead. Thank you, Subhashini, for being the first to send your response. Now, if you could see the prompt, I'm actually inviting you to write an introduction, but in this very episode of the introduction, I want you to get this whole thing in context. What is the context is, solar panels, and they are not tried in rainy climates, and that is what the research gap, so that you can highlight on your research gap as well, and you have to state your aim as well. They are all done, but I'm just inviting you to make use of the praise bank to support each of these points. Thank you, Banuka. Thank you, Banuka, for your great synthesis. Great, Shamat. Aslam, a good attempt. But I will invite you to change bit of your praise there. In this report, we are researching, you can say, in this report, we study or we research on solar panels in rainy climates. Soon, good piece of writing. Nipun, good piece of writing, Nipun. Perfect. Kusal, good work. Now, friends, you must be now feeling little comfortable in using this praise bank, because when you have a standard praise bank in your catalog, you see that with standard praise bank, you're gonna fit your research rightly to any any accessible editor. Binura, good work, Binura. So let me invite you all to submit this as a submission of today's work. I'll create right now a submission link where you can send it, right? So you can quite simply send it to Moodle. Let me create it right now. Yes. I have created the submission link. You can type it out there and submit so that we can assess it. I can comment on it. I can take time and comment. Dharani, thank you. Great. So take little time and do it and submit it as your submission of the day. Well, let's move on. What else have we got to share today? Right. And if you go further, you'll see, how in methods and description section also, how can we use the phrase bank. I want you to have your special attention on this slide on time phrases. Are you there? Yes, I wish. Now, when you're using, just look at the examples and time frame. If you're talking about a specific step in the past, thank you, Rashila, for your submission. Okay. Specific steps that we've done in the past, you see how it is indicated. X was collected during the first phase. Prior to doing X, we did Y. You see? You can indicate time frames in your methodology with such a cute standard phrase given in the phrase bank and make your writing much more standard and clear. And friends, I think the rest of the work is actually something that you can do following the slides, which I will be uploading right now to Moodle. And I advise you to go through the slides and do each of these exercises with the help of phrase bank, with which I'm sure that you are going to be familiar with the phrase bank and make your journey of research writing much more easier. So I'm actually thinking of winding up today's session a little early, but we have actually achieved the outcomes we wanted to reach. That is to give you a sense of how this back and forth reference or rather clarifications could be reduced to 0 or perhaps 1 or 2 by clearing doubts in your write-up. Thank you for all those who are submitting. Well, so ladies and gentlemen, take your time to do the rest of the activities given in slides, which I will be sharing on screen, not on screen, actually on Moodle. Please make sure that you attempt them leisurely within the week's time coming ahead, and send your responses to Moodle so that we'll be able to mark them and of course give you a little bit of a response with which I'm sure that you are going to be a bit more familiar on your writing journey. So friends, for today, shall we come to an end and wind it up? We'll do so because it's almost 9:47 and we are closing 10, and we have achieved our learning outcomes for the day, and keeping the rest to be done as self-studies and making room for you to try them, referring to the material and upload it to the Moodle. Let me say good night and looking forward to see you on this Saturday with a different topic. I'll be uploading even the future schedule as well tonight. So refer to it and join me on this Saturday early in the morning. Good night, friends.